Everyone. This last session of the day, we have 7 very illustrious panelists and a very interesting topic to talk about. So I won't waste too much time in getting started. This session is primarily focused on Aatmanirbharta and what's called vocal for local. Now many believe that Aatmanirbharta is primarily about making things in India. It is about making things in India, but it's not just about making things in India. In many ways, as you would have heard the Prime Minister in a brief clip in one of the videos this morning, it's also about thinking local, understanding what is relevant for us, and not just copying what has been done elsewhere, thinking that will work all over the place. So I think a lot of it is about thinking local, trying to understand what works in India, and trying to do what is right in the Indian context. That really is Aatmanirbharta, of course going beyond making things in India itself. With that brief background, let me start with Mr. Vikas Kumar, who is the MD of DMRC. Because DMRC has really been a pioneer in metro rail systems in the country. After the Calcutta Metro Rail, the country sort of decided we don't want to do metros because the experience was not all that good. And DMRC really set the example and reversed that belief. But having been the first, you have in many ways pioneered a lot of other metros coming up in the country. You've also been doing a lot to try and get localization into metro parks and other metro systems. I think DMRC itself got built in record time. Today I heard that the Kanpur Metro was done in about 2 years' time. Obviously, it's spade work that you had set in place long ago. Can you tell us a little more about what DMRC has done in terms of localization and whatever you've done in trying to get things done locally?
Thank you, sir. As you already mentioned, that DMRC came into the picture when people had very bitter experience of Calcutta Metro. In fact, it took 23 years for a 17-kilometer line. It was really, and a lot of time overruns and cost overruns. So DMRC started at such a time when there was quite a negative publicity regarding a metro, and moreover, metros as a strategy are planned whenever a city, the population grows more than 1 million, the city starts thinking for a metro, and the planning is done in such a manner that the economic and social hubs and other development, it comes along with the metro. Here in Delhi, the situation was quite different. We had to retrofit metro in an already developed city. So that was quite a challenging job. It was a very difficult, in fact I would say, urban project. Lot of tunneling to be done, lot of technical challenges were there. Right from the beginning, we decided to have the best of technology, and our prime focus was always quality, reliability, safety and comfort, and at the same time, indigenization. But also saw to it that these sources remain sustainable. It was quite a challenging task. I must share with you that Make in India policy came in 2014, but Delhi Metro, right from the beginning, was very much in favor of indigenization. Our specifications and tendering was done in such a manner which promoted indigenization, it promoted transfer of technology to India. There were many challenges over here. Firstly, the changing demand was there in the construction industry. Lack of standardization was there. OEMs were reluctant to part with their technology. And at the same time, there was a pressure on doing the job fast, to deliver fast. And so there was less time to develop a local partner. And lastly, it was also the quality and reliability of the local partner also need to be, in fact, seen properly. And also the reluctance of the local partner, thinking that if he invests in that, whether he will get future orders or not. So we had to tide over all these things for getting, in fact, say for trains, take an example. I am proud to say that today 90% of the trains are made in India. Right from the beginning, we had put a condition that 75% of the manufacturing should be done in India, and that led to industries or manufacturing plants being set up in BEML in collaboration with Rotem firstly, then came Savli, then came Sri City, and lastly Metro, in fact at Titagarh plant also has jumped into this. So, and what to say of manufacturing in India, rather they have exported from here. So, our vision was to have make in India and at the same time do import substitution and moreover do export, which is now seeing the light of the day. In rolling stock, I can proudly say now that around 70% of localization has been done. Various components of rolling stock, be it mechanical or electrical or electronic, are as a transfer of technology with local partners being manufactured in India. Similarly, for signaling, we have around 50%. For E&M, again 50%. For OHE, again we have 70%. Rather, in phase 4, all the lifts are indigenized, what we are putting up, and escalators to the tune of 65%. This all is as a result of a dedicated team. I seem to be running out of time. There is a lot to say about all these things, but I would like to cut short over here and say that after this Make in India policy came in 2014, our hands have further been strengthened, and as a result, I would say that today DMRC is one of the most vocal for local in sustainable urban transport. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Vikas. It's what DMRC has done is not just for itself, but for all the other metros that are coming up in the country. And we got some numbers during the Honorable Minister's speech this morning. 800 kilometers already there, 900, almost 1,000 in the pipeline, and much more yet to come. So contributions of DMRC are really helping all the other metro systems that will also come up in the country. But with this, let me turn to Mr. Rajiv Josia. Rajiv, as the head of two of the best known equipment suppliers for rail-based systems, first with Bombardier, now you're with Alstom. What is your vision for rail-based transport in India, and what are your plans in terms of, say, furthering this localization or indigenization? Can you tell us something about what your plans are? Over to you, Raj.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. First of all, I thank MOA, I thank Government of Kerala and the Kochi Metro to organize this event, allowing this platform to discuss such an important subject for the future of mobility, urban mobility in India. If I may break down your question into two parts, let me start with where do we stand on our vision of what we can play as a role in this segment. Alstom today, globally, as you are aware, we are partnering with 300 cities around the world. We have a strong customer base of 1,000 around the world. And we have a very resilient model, business model, I would say, to lead the future of mobility in India. Having said that, with a large portfolio, multiple assets, product range, and enhanced customer relationships, we believe, and that's our objective as well, that we should lead the way for the future towards smarter and greener mobility in India. And this we can do based on certain pillars. Pillar of growth, where we bring value to our customer. Pillar of innovation, which is very important because we need to continue to create efficient, affordable, and sustainable mobility solutions, and to deliver on our commitments to our customer. Railway transport has been always a backbone of any country in terms of socio-economic development, and therefore it's a very important element that needs to be having solution to move people between cities, within cities, between suburbs. If you look at India today, we are one of the busiest urban transit hubs in the world, with almost 2.6 million ridership annually only in the metros. And it's also one of the fourth longest operation in the world. If we see our solutions today, which we have and which we need, if I talk about the within city solution, we are banking on metros. We are trying to get Metro Light and the Metro Neo. So with that range, probably we can address the Tier 1 to Tier 3 cities. And it has in the last 15 cities, we have seen that this is working quite efficiently. So this probably can solve the within city solution. But it may not be limited to that. We need also a suburban network, which today is operated by railway. Today we see that network is almost having more than 50% ridership account of the total railway network, even though it is only close to 3,000 kilometers. So we need technological advancement, we need improvement in that as well to address the suburban network. If I see the rapid rail, which is more a solution between cities, today we see one example of Delhi Meerut. That's a game changer. That's a differentiator because it connects major cities, reduces journey time, brings improves the safety, comfort of the people. That's a game changer, and we need that for between city solutions. We also need an efficient commuter rail system, which today is mainly dependent on railway network, and that's something can also change the game for us. If I see how Alstom's vision can contribute and support the need of India, we believe today in the metro segment, out of 15 operating lines, we are already there in 7 of them, contributing either through rolling stock, signaling, or infra. For the 5 under execution, we are already there, and including 1 RRTS. We are also playing a significant role in the suburban network today and also the commuter. So we are already doing our bit, but we need to do more. And that's where we need to continue as a leader in our segment to invest, to bring in technologies which are affordable, efficient, and sustainable. So that's one part of the vision. Now, if I look at the theme of this year, which is localization, Aatmanirbhar Bharat, vocal for local. As Alstom, we are fully aligned with this theme. We believe this is the way to go. Today, Alstom is deeply committed towards this, Aatmanirbhar Bharat theme and vision of India. And Alstom India today is a hub of engineering, sourcing, and manufacturing for the rest of the globe. When I say that, we have been having a footprint which is today 6 industrial sites. We have 2 rolling stock sites, 2 component factories, 1 JV with the railway, and 1 car body manufacturing site. So it's a huge asset for us to contribute towards making India or Aatmanirbhar Bharat theme. And we will continue to do so. If I look at the projects that we have been doing in India, not only for India but also for outside, we have been exporting projects to Queensland.
1 minute for you.
We have been exporting to Montreal, Sydney. So that again is a boost to the theme that we would like to follow. To do that, we need a solid engineering and sourcing base. Today, 2/3 of our engineering work that we do are for the global work. That's the competency we have developed in India. For the sourcing, we have developed 1,600 suppliers today who are contributing significantly for even our global export projects. As a company, we have invested more than 13 billion in the last 5 years. We have augmented our factories, and we will continue to do so to boost the Make in India campaign. So again, we strongly advocate this theme. We are committed, and we will continue to bring in more Make in India concept in whatever we do to make the real transformation work for India. Thank you once again for this opportunity and time.
Thanks very much, Rajiv. Now, after talking about metro rail and sort of indigenization of its parts, let me move to another sector which is also coming in very strongly in the country. In many ways, this is coming up very strongly. And again, we heard something about this from the Honorable Minister this morning. Let me move to Mahua Acharya. Mahua, in many ways, this electric mobility is picking up very strongly in India, and you had a very big role to play in that. But when we look at where electric mobility is going in the developed world, it is much more about electrification of personal motor vehicles. Now that, in the Indian context, whether that is right, perhaps not. What we've been talking in India a lot more is not so much about converting so many motor vehicles to electric, but converting so many vehicle miles to electric. And that obviously means that vehicles which do much more miles in a day are the right ones to go. And you really, in many ways, created a revolution by demonstrating the ability of standardized contracts, of aggregated demand to bring down prices very significantly. I think that's been a great achievement that CESL under your leadership has taken. But could you tell us a little more about what you see as the future? How do you plan to move ahead? And what's the future in this, in India?
Thank you. And thank you again to Government of Kerala and MOUD for having me at this conference. Going forward, I think we have demonstrated that this model achieves a price that is cheaper, more affordable, and more attractive because we're finding that STUs or whoever is taking the bus is not buying the bus anymore. So there's no cash outgo on day one. Okay. Better? All right, okay. So the model is this model of mobility being provided as a service is being recognized and will stay. Now, what do we see going forward? We have been given a target of 50,000 electric buses, and I know you think there's a problem with the zero and we should really be doing 500,000. There is no shortage of demand for electric buses, simply just because it is cheaper. And citizens and users will like it because it doesn't leave the tailpipe smell at the back. And over time, I think our buses will just get more luxurious and they will get nicer for people to use, which means, or at least I'm being very hopeful, that at least some portion of the four-wheeler segment or people going to office will get into a bus. And the bus will be a viable, normal alternative and not simply one that is the cheapest, least cost. So we have to pay a lot of attention to make sure that in the quest for the least cost, of course we should not shortchange quality, but continually drive to lift the quality and the luxury potential of buses. The next big chunk is financing. How do we finance this? These contracts, and at least for some of you who are a little, who may be familiar with how infrastructure was financed. We did build airports in this country. We built a lot of roads and we still do. These are hard, long, big size infrastructure projects. These contracts have now begun to look like infrastructure. They're 12 years and they have a fixed income. The type of money coming in or the type of funds which come in are looking for very different things. So our counterparty risk, that's what the financial world calls it, is our STUs, and they don't give you a very comforting financial picture. I'm not saying that they don't pay, but they're in loss, and they have habitually been in loss. And so a financier coming in asks the question, what if I don't get paid? The other thing that doesn't help any of us is in our renewable energy industry. We have had, I think perhaps the single biggest risk factor is the contract with the distribution company, and there's enough experience to show that discoms don't pay. So investors and financiers immediately go back to that precedence. There is, however, good precedence in that we have built structures in our renewable energy business that allow financiers to come in. We have centralized agencies that take care of payments. And so there's just something that should be, we should look at picking up some lessons from in our own backyard, at home, in some other sector. So let's not leave that behind. So addressing the financing question is a function of risk mitigation. There's no shortage of capital. The third big thing, and this is a much bigger topic, is our STUs have been born, and you know this much better than me. They own the buses, they own the people, they own the spare parts, they own the tires and everything. And now we're asking them, not gradually, but really quickly. Each of the tenders that we're running, we're on tender number 2, it's live right now, it's over 6,000. In a few weeks, another 5,000 to 6,000 will come along. If we do a little bit more business development, I think another 10,000, 15,000 will come. So there's no shortage of demand. So these STUs are now no longer gradually moving to a different model. They've got this model to deal with at scale. So the role of our STUs and their character will change. They will have to change. They'll have to move from the owning mindset to how do I enable, how do I manage contracts. And fundamentally at the base of this is we have to digitize. In order to allow them to do their new job well, everything should be digitized. Payments should ideally be digitized. The contract should be digitized. The payment gateways should be interlinked. At a central agency, I should be able to tell which buses work, which vendors work. Well, remember, this technology is still relatively new. Remember that it may not end up being lithium ion for who knows, 5 years from now, maybe we'll be doing something else. So we've got to also monitor a lot of other things. So using technology is quite fundamental.
think that's a big change that needs to happen. You spoke about finance, you spoke about the institutional capacity. I think those are big changes that need to happen. But turning to Mukund, one of the things Mahua said was there is no shortage of demand. Now, it's true there's no shortage of demand for electric buses in India, but manufacturing capacity in India is perhaps a little weak. Now, any thoughts on this? You know, what can India do to improve manufacture of electric buses? In fact, buses itself and their spare parts, what could India do about that? Your thoughts on this?
Thank you, sir. I think it's one of the most relevant questions when we are looking at having larger volumes and looking at indigenizing the technology. I think the first issue is volumes, which you mentioned, and there is a lot of demand, but there are a lot of other issues related to the demand. For example, if we see the total EVs sold in 2021, it was about 2.5 lakhs, 250,000, out of which around 54% was two-wheelers, 42% was three-wheelers, so 96% it's either two-wheelers or three-wheelers, and remaining 4% is cars. Buses don't even feature in that, I mean it's just numbers, so it's 0.000 some percent. So volumes are very low, and what I also want to point out here is that the volumes of two-wheelers, three-wheelers and four-wheelers are actually increasing. So that is another challenge for buses to come on road. Coming to the second aspect, which is basically the core for indigenization, is the consistency in the specifications, which we call standardization. Now, the other day I was in a conference where we had a STU officer from Himachal who said that they have got buses from two different vendors, but the sockets are different for both. If you see the manufacturers in India, there are 5 manufacturers, and the types of buses vary from about 50 kilometers per charge to 230 kilometers per charge. Talking about buses in the country, the specification itself is a challenge because of the types of buses required. We would require an intercity bus, we would require an urban bus. In the urban space itself, you'll find that the geography of cities are different, so there's a different requirement, but within this we need to specify the specifications, the technicalities, the technologies, because unless until a manufacturer sees a future in more demand, he's not going to set up facilities in India. And if we buy one specification at a time and later on we change these specifications, that is an issue. The third issue is the specification of the batteries themselves, which I mentioned, from 50 to 250 kilometers per charge. Now, talking about batteries, it is the performance of the batteries is very contextual to the topography. Currently, we are borrowing a lot of technology from Europe, China maybe. Temperature is one aspect which plays a havoc with the battery. If the temperature goes up, the life goes down. If the temperature goes down, the life increases, but the charging capabilities reduce. The self-discharge rate increases at different temperatures. So, planning for urban buses, we will need to actually look at a technology which addresses this. So, technology is also an issue for indigenization. And we are talking about buses running from Jammu to Kerala and from Gujarat to West Bengal. So, there are a lot of issues there. Coming to the manufacturing capabilities, we have the capabilities, but it's a question of volumes. Perhaps in one area where we would need to take a look is the availability of some rare earth materials. For example, lithium. Lithium, there are 4 countries: Chile, China, Argentina, Australia. Cobalt is only in 1 country. There are a lot of specific rare earth materials required for permanent magnets in synchronous motors. The proponents for having electrification do say that all these materials are recyclable, completely recyclable. Have we been able to recycle what we can? That is a question. So though these are recyclable, will we be able to do that? And I think the fourth aspect, which is very important, we need to see the charging infrastructure itself. The public electric vehicles to public charging ratio is going to be high. So that type of infrastructure is required, and unless until we have this infrastructure, probably we'll have an issue. I think it was 5th of September when I saw a news which in California, where the government asked the people not to plug in their EVs during the busy holidays. The grid is going to go down. So I think these four challenges are some of the major challenges which we have to look at and sort of mitigate if we really want to indigenize. So I'll stop here, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Mukund. That's fascinating. I think when you're making these kind of changes of technology, there will always be teething problems that we are facing today. So today, battery technology is probably something where there is a little bit of worry, where do you get lithium? But let's hope research will be able to show different battery chemistries which sort of make it a little easier for us. We don't know where it will go, but that's where. The other thing you mentioned about bus specifications, the one thing I've always been curious about is, why are we stuck with this 12-meter bus? Are there not different sizes of buses? And when I keep telling Mahua, look at 5 lakh buses, not 50,000, I'm not referring to all of them being 12-meter buses. You would have smaller buses to meet a niche market, higher-end market, that kind of thing. Where honestly, I agree with her that the demand for buses is huge. But I think a lot of mindset change in, should we stick with the same specifications or look beyond? I think that's a good point you make. But with electric mobility, let me now move to this whole sector of digital India, where, again, another sector where India is leading a lot, and I'll turn to Mr. Koshi. Mr. Koshi, you've been involved in some of the major digital transformations in the country. I mean, UID for me is mind-boggling. I remember Mr. Nandan Nilekani came and made a presentation at the World Bank when I used to be there in Washington. The house was full and everyone was floored with what he had achieved and the kind of numbers that you're talking of. Any numbers that we talk in India are obviously mind-boggling for anyone outside. So that's the kind of thing you've been involved in. But if I was to ask you for some idea in the space of sustainable mobility, where IT can play an important role, what would those be? What is it that we can showcase from the Digital India platforms or the Digital India issues in the mobility sector?
Thank you. We had been listening quite a lot about the diverse hardware, from digital, from metro rails to electric vehicles and so on and so forth. In that way, I'm an odd man out. I'm not talking about any hardware or any transport system. But I'm trying to talk about what this is all trying to do to give a better customer experience. The softer side, whether it is metro, whether it is water transport, whether it is taxi hailing, everything is towards one thing, to take the customer from one place to another. Can it be a seamless experience? And that's where the digital can do a lot. Unfortunately, what happened, not just in India, around the world, is that when the digital solutions to improve the customer experience took place in mobility and in commerce and in hotels, it became walled gardens of proprietary technology, often belonging to large big tech enterprises with very limited opportunity for the entrepreneurs and startups to actually innovate, build, and go big. And that's where India has taken a first time in the planet an experiment of trying to bring the idea of open network. You asked me for one idea, that's the open network, which I would like to talk from my side. And you saw a curtain raising it today in a very limited fashion. And that open network is going to break down silos in mobility, not just in mobility, but also in commerce, in hotels, in transport, financial products, everything, all in one way. Because for customer, see, I may want to hail a cab to go to the metro station, take a metro, go to the airport, buy a ticket, take a flight to Delhi, get a hotel. These are all a series of activity. Today, these are all separate walled gardens, and each controlled by their own entity. If we can give a seamless experience, that can be completely different. But unfortunately, that's not the way the commerce has grown. And that's a problem around the world, whether it is developed countries like US, which they are trying to address, and in European Union, they are trying to address this through regulation. Americans are trying to do America Innovation and Online Choice Act, which is to address the issue of concentration and market practices. The Europeans are trying to do Digital Market Access Act, which is also the same thing. The Chinese said, forget all this act, I'll take control. Whereas India is leading the world by showing that let's use technology with market, with the enabling policies to democratize, to give equal opportunity. A taxi driver with a taxi union should have the same accessibility to the same billion customers that a big tech can do. And that is, in fact, when we started developing this protocol and this idea, Kerala government took an initiative to do a small pilot in Cochin, and that's still running. And then that gave us the confidence. Ministry of Commerce built on this whole idea and created the open network for digital commerce across the country. And mobility naturally becomes a part. And Kerala has taken one step further and said that they've come full in the commerce side, but also on the mobility side, they said, let's roll it out across the state. That's what you saw the curtain raising small. And they said, let it be a part of the larger open network. And that's the big idea, which is sort of, in that way, we are truly proud that world is showing, India is showing an example to the world, not just as solving a developing country problem, but a problem that the whole world is facing, whether it's developed or developing country. That's a small message I want to say. I know that in a way, from the transport story, a little out of place, but at the end of it, like I said in the beginning, it's all about customer experience.
Thanks, Mr. Koshi. Actually, if big changes have happened in the transport sector over the last few years, if major disruptions have happened, it's because IT has got integrated into transport systems in such a big way. And again, listening to the minister in the morning, he was speaking about 2047, the vision for 2047. He asked all of us to think about what would your vision be for urban transport in 2047. And the thought that kept coming to my mind was, in 2047, if I'm alive, of course, can I think of some mechanism, a single app, by which I can say I want to go from place A to place B. I can spend so much, I have only so much time. Can that app tell me, this is the mix of transport modes that you can use, whether it's a helicopter or whether it's a walking route in that whole spectrum, and applicable anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world. Today, the Uber app is applicable anywhere in the world. Can we have something of that sort, which is available to anyone? Maybe even the next step is including in that freight movements. I want to transport something from here to there. What's the best way to do it? I need it to reach there in so much time. So that's, I think, the power of IT, and I hope that with your background, we will have something of that sort soon. But with that, again, staying in the digital space, let me move to Mohit. Mohit, you've been the heart and soul of this Chalo app. And that has really done a huge contribution to increasing bus ridership in the country. Can you tell us a little more about this? And also with that, a little bit of what is your vision for urban mobility in the country? What do you think is the direction it will take? If you were to answer the minister's question of what is your vision for urban transport in 2047, what would that be? Over to you.
You're generous, thank you. Last time we wanted to go from Bombay to Goa, I asked my 6-year-old daughter how she want to go, by bus, by train, or take a flight, or even a car for that matter. She wanted to travel like a Star Trek, get inside a room, press a button, and appear in Goa. That's how we should really travel, teleportation, But until we figure telepathy, we have mobiles. And until we figure teleportation, we have to solve the transport. But before I come to that, sir, I was part of a company called Carval. I founded it. And I saw what cars did to us on our roads. For last 100 years, as human beings, we have solved few things amazingly well. It's no longer a problem to go from Bombay to New York. You can literally do, not morning, evening, but you can just go, attend a meeting and come back. It's no longer a taboo like Saat Samundar Paar Mat Jana, it's all done. We all came to Kochi from different cities, it was so easy to come here. But you cannot say the same thing once you come out of the airport and go to your home. It's a nightmare. Whether you ask people how far you live from airport, they say 1 hour, 2 hours. We measure distance in time, not in kilometers. I'll just fast forward and say, assume for next 10, 20, 30 years, we have done so much progress in autonomous vehicle, we've done so much progress in solar, that each of us can have a pod, which is solar driven, autonomous, it will never have an accident. You can press a button, it will take you to the airport, it will take you to the home. But if you put 50 such pods from here to say airport on the highway, you will have to put them together. You will combine them, automatically, because you will still need to preserve momentum. You still need to preserve how you harness the solar energy. If you put 50 pods together, it's a 50-seater bus. The future of transport is going to be mass transport. It's going to be public transport. It can be solar, it can be electrical, it can be autonomous, but it has to be mass transport, and that's what you have to figure and solve. And it will be sustainable and all that. I think we have already learned that we cannot keep taking away from Earth. We have to give it back. We have to be regenerative about it. Today, at Chalo, we deliver more than 5 million rides every day, maybe 1 billion rides in a year. And it's nothing. It's not even 1% of the market. On Earth, we have 7 billion people, and we take 10 billion rides every day. And I can literally say, and most of us will agree, that most of them are compromised. They are poor quality. They're not great. So once you build a public transport, once you build a mass transport, the future is definitely not private vehicle. It's not. It will be mass transport and integrated mobility, whether it's a pod, whether it's an e-bike, etc. And we made some small progress. For example, today we run some 5,000 e-bikes across different cities. You come out of the bus, you can take a bike. We try and make it work. To me, we will have public transport, integrated mobility, and a great delight, great experience, when we travel within the city. That's how it would be. I don't know if I answered your question completely, but largely that's what it is. And even today, what 5 million or whatever we do, even if we do 100 million rides in 2-3 years, it will be still tiny, we're scratching the surface. Yeah.
Thanks, Mohit. It's always fascinating, and particularly hearing you and your passion for this has always been really fascinating for me. Thanks for that. Coming to Dr. Sehgal. Dr. Sehgal, you've spent a lifetime with the Indian Railways, and your achievements, particularly as an electrical engineer in the Indian Railways, for me has been personally really interesting, because I did spend a year in the Indian Railways as an electrical engineer. That's why when I hear your achievements, it sort of takes me back to what can happen in that sector. Really amazing. But what I also found very interesting is that you headed MRVC. Now, MRVC again is something which is an example of how a very centralized organization like the Indian Railways can partner with the state government to meet the needs of that state government. So that again is, real credit to what happens as a kind of a partnership between the railways and state governments. But given your experience, I want to give you a very general question. From your experience, what would you think are some of the highlights of the Indian Railways contribution towards, whatever we call as vocal for local or Aatmanirbharta?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dabish, can you show the first picture? Dabish, show the. Thank you, sir. Picture only. I'll just go through it. That will give the other thing I will not show. Next. This is the major problem which we are facing in the Mumbai. Because Mumbai started in 1925 these trains by Britishers. They started for their commercial benefits. And fare structure was very highly subsidized, which continues to be today. Now each kilometer is 10 paisa per kilometer. It is still very, very cheap. It continued to be the same, and people came in search of jobs to Bombay, and this was the farthest mode of transport. People are coming from 150 kilometers, and now 85 lakhs people travel per day. And 10 deaths were there per day when World Bank took over this. And we were not able to do anything because finances were not there. It was a losing proposition. Government of Maharashtra was not giving funds. Indian Railways were not giving funds. And nobody was coming to our rescue. And we wanted on the same tracks, fast trains, Rajdhani, goods, everything were moving. There was no segregation. In that scenario, World Bank came to our rescue.
the government of Maharashtra got the road transport project sanctioned. Then they said, with road nothing happens till this approves. Then they went to MUTP, Mumbai Railway Urban Transport Project. So they gave lot of inputs. At that time, other metro projects were not started. So this was the thing. They said MRVC should be set up with 50-50 partnership between government of Maharashtra and Indian Railways, which was done. And then half the loan will be taken by World Bank. Both will give it, but it will be through the surcharge on the tickets. Tickets of 2 rupees was made to 2 rupees and 48 paisa, nothing. But 240 crores are being realized because volume is so much. At that time we started that there will be segregation of mainline trains from the passenger. So we have to lay the additional tracks. Our land was encroached. I still remember the World Bank people, I am very indebted to them. When they came for the thing, they said, how you lay? Said, it is our land, we'll remove them. He said, you cannot remove. Any person who is affected by your project, authorizedly or unauthorizedly, should be given honorable exit. Means what? House or house. We thought in the railway, entire country, so much is encroachment. If the railway started giving the houses, we will be bankrupt. But they said, if you want to take the loan, take it. But government of India came to our rescue. They said, yes, house for house, only for Bombay, no other city. And what was the strategy? That we will have, this was a DC traction, which is highly inefficient. It was not able to cater to the load. We wanted to increase the coaches from 9 to 12. With DC traction, it was not possible. Then we thought we will procure the AC traction with 18 coach fix. In future, if it requires, we will be able to do. So 18 coach, we wrote the specification with the help of World Bank. And then we'll immediately do from 9 to 12. Straightway create 33% capacity. And we did a tender. As World Bank states, please go for an international bidding. We were having only 2,500 crores for 1,000 coaches. For 1,000 coaches, 25 crores each coach. 2.5 crores for each coach. When we did the international bidding, bid came for 6,000 crores. And that much money was not there, neither government of India wanted to give us. Then we revised our plan that we will make our coaches in ICF. Then World Bank told, it is your PSU, will not give the loan. Then ultimately they relented, okay, don't use our money in ICF, but electrics you should procure. So we thought we'll procure the electrics latest, which are not available in India. Whosoever gets the order, Siemens got the order, 30% he will make from abroad, 70% will make in India. And World Bank also told, give them 200 crores interest-free loan so that you set up 4 factories. I am very happy to state that Siemens set up 4 factories in India, power converter, auxiliary converter, transformer in 2006, and all the things were indigenized. And in the same tender, when we see the cost of the Indian products are 33% lower. So that means this thing has come to India. Then ICF, we put about 60 Siemens engineers. I gave 100% commissioning to them because we cannot remove any person from the railways. Our unions are very strong and we cannot recruit more. So we thought only these people have to do. They were not able to do because they are not engaged. So we gave this money to Siemens. Those 60 people were engaged at ICF, Central Railway, West Railway. They hold our hands, and workshop was also done up with our money. And Vande Mataram, which has come, seeds were sown by MUTP. So this is the thing, and now I am just telling, if at all you want to do anything, now 2,400, 500 coaches more are coming, more lines are coming. Projects worth 50,000 crores have been sanctioned by Government of India and Ministry Government of Maharashtra. So I can only tell, things can do well, provided Government of States, Center go well, staff should support you, then supplier should support you, and NGO should not create much problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saigal. Actually, this picture is really fascinating. I've seen this in so many places, and I remember when I first joined the railways and I got posted to Bombay, the first time I went to Bombay.
Sir, this is a copyright of World Bank.
But Bombay suburban system. So that's what they photograph. And sometimes I used to wonder how many of these people have either their hand or their leg on the train, or are they just holding someone else who's holding the train? It's
Actually,
a really
sir,
fascinating picture.
In metro, we say 8 people per square meter is the ultimate. Here, there are 16 people per square meter. 1 6.
So this
All
is
are included. And ventilation is also not there.
now we have a little bit of time, thanks to all the panelists who stuck to the time that was given to them. We have a little bit of time. We'd like to reach out to the audience. Anyone who would like to sort of talk about Aatmanirbharta and mobility, anyone who has a question for any of the panelists. I see NVS Reddy sitting there. Dr. Sarkar can't not have a question. I can't believe Gerald won't have a question. So, Debashish, can we arrange for some mics over there? Professor Sarkar. If you can, everyone knows you, but still, if you can just introduce yourself and tell us whom you are asking the question to.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. First question is to Ms. Mohua Acharya.
Can't hear you.
My first question.
Sarkar sir, thoda is taraf aa jaiye. I think the light is causing a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me introduce myself. I'm Professor Pradeep Sarkar. And my first question is to Ms. Mohua Acharya. And there are 2 questions. Then I will talk a little bit on Mohit's, talking about his visions. First one is that I know the electric buses are very costly as compared to the conventional buses. It is 2 times, more or less more than 2 times as the conventional buses. Now at Aatma Nirbhar Bharat, do you have any plans to bring down the cost drastically so that it becomes affordable for the companies to procure? Number 1. Number 2 is that I have seen in particular today in DTC, the maintenance contract is very difficult to get along because most of the vendors do not come forward. So, and this is one of the challenges that DTC has faced. So, do you also contemplate this kind of problems in near future? And in case if so, how we are going to address it? The next one is Mr. Mohit. You talked about the future vision is mass transport. Yes, I appreciate. The question is that this is going to be true for large section of society, but there are still people in the allied group. I think they would like to fly in their own car. Car should have a mechanism to fly and move faster than any others. So this is one of the visions I felt this may come true in near future. Thank you.
So, Mahua, Mukund and Mohit. No? Achha, okay. Mahua and Mohit, okay.
Yeah, this works. It works. So your first questions are on cost. 2 answers. India right now, electric buses are probably one of the cheapest in the world. And the prices may probably come down and will come down with time and with volume. But that's less of an important issue than a change in business model. So people are not necessarily having to buy a bus anymore. So the old bus, a diesel bus was 25, 30, 35 lakhs, whatever it was. In an electric bus, it's 2.5 times more, but they're not buying a bus anymore. Now they're buying a service. And that just means that the cost of that service is now, in our last tender, is 30% less than the cost of the same thing because they were using diesel. And still cheaper than CNG. So the mind is no longer just about buying a bus anymore. We have to find new business models. In this other business model, to your second question, that O&M people don't want to come forward. You see, in the business model that we're increasingly using, which is suitable for STU, state transport companies, is we're doing a PPP kind of structure where a private operator comes in with the bus, they operate the bus, many also finance the bus. So the incentive for efficiency and quality lies with the private operator. And there is, whether they contract an OEM partner or whether they do the OEM by themselves is entirely left to private industry to decide what is more competitive and what's more reasonable for them to do. So that job has been passed over. And therefore, as a private consumer, the incentive around, there is some incentive for quality in the system. It lies with the private operator. The more efficient the operation, the more they save.
Mohit? I couldn't hear it at all.
Sarkar Sahab.
Sir, I couldn't hear you at all very well. I'm sorry about it, but if you can repeat.
Thoda, if you again come a little this side, because that light behind you, we can't see anything.
Mr. Mohit, I think that you can hear me now.
Yep, slightly better now.
As a vision, you said in 2047, perhaps you will like to have a large-scale mass transportation systems. Fine. It will be going to be availed by large section of people. But there is some elite section, you cannot just forget it. So I feel now the invention, that the way it is growing up, you talked about autonomous vehicle, connected vehicle. I also add another flavor to it, that the car will be designed and in a manner, invented in a manner which will have a flying system. So at any point of time, due to congestion or for going faster, it can fly. I think that this kind of situation is emerging around nowadays as a part of technological development. This is my vision. I just shared with you.
But that was to...
I'm sorry, I have a hearing problem, but I couldn't really make out very well. But if somebody can just send me 2 lines.
Was that a supplementary to Mahua or?
Yeah, supplementary to Mr. Mohit, because he has talked about his vision. He has talked about his vision for 2047.
Oh, okay, I got it. You're saying why have mass transport? You can have flying cars. Is that what you said?
Flying cars. Yeah, that could be also one of the major mode of transport along with the mass transit system.
Yeah, I wish you have to know, not even know to fly. You can just disappear and appear, right? That's ideal. But my point is, any kind of a private transport, see, even when people are at Mars, right? When Elon Musk has got to the Mars, what is the biggest problem? The last mile. And a lot of things they do is using a mass transport. A lot of satellites get transported like a bus. Bus is so fundamental, and I want to keep insisting upon it. I see UMI conference on the top 10 is sponsored by 9 metros. I hope we see a lot of bus companies there in some way. Ultimately, CSL should be put up there, right? So, my point is, it has to be mass transport because it's more efficient in any way. So, sun, ultimately is a life, right? You can't keep harnessing energy unnecessary and just like that. And every time you will make people travel together, it will be more efficient. So, instead of a private car, it should be a bus.
I don't deny with that, the fact.
Sarkar Sahab, let's give others a chance. I think let's give others a chance. Anyone else? Anyone else who has a question or a comment? Gerald? Again, Gerald, the request is if you can just come, that light behind you is...
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. And first, thanks, Dr. Siegel, for the nice comment on MRVC.
You can bring your mic up, yeah.
Yes. Thanks, Dr. Siegel, for the nice comments on the experience with MRVC. I think anybody who has been involved in MUTP 1 or 2 has great pride associated with that. I would like to come back to one of the opening statements you made, OP, on what is the size of a challenge with respect to e-bus, and with a question to Mohit and to Mahua. Ultimately, you have about 1 million bus in India that are very actively, working. The question is, how fast can you scale up the e-bus transition towards, 500,000, as you were describing? There are lots of great new data used that allows you to do a better job, and that's what Chalo has been focusing on. There are fantastic new business models that Marwa and the team have been able to achieve, but those are still looking at 50,000, which is a huge challenge and a huge undertaking. How do we move to the 500,000, leveraging on private sector initiative and the kind of innovative procurement and business model you have developed?
You want to take that?
Okay. So this is one of the sectors that I don't think we can afford to do things in succession. In a lot of sectors we say, let's do some pilot, let's see how it works, then let's see about capacity building, and then stage 3, now let's worry about finance, and then let's worry about repurposing. This is not the way the industry is moving, the way our state governments are moving. This is not a sector where we can afford to do that, because if we do, we will make not just mistakes, but things will break. Meaning, if I have a contract, as an example, if I have a contract today, and the contract is new, remember the business model is relatively new, and if I don't get paid, it sets a very bad precedent, and that precedent becomes slippery, and negative emotions start coming in, and a lot of questions start getting asked. If a bus fails, and if the technology fails, you know how many conversations I've been in about fire hazards of batteries. So we have to work on the quality of the technology in parallel with the financing, and our supply has to pick up. So this is one of the sectors, and this is one of the times in our mobility transition that we simply have to have people working in parallel, simultaneously. Supply side, the policy side. A lot of people tell me that we don't have a policy for circular economy. We don't have a policy for reuse of batteries. Or we can sit tight and wait. But if we have a policy today that puts somewhat of a value for an old battery, it reduces the price already. And it gives the market a signal for a brand new market to develop. Now, can I live without that? Yes, I think we are having been living without that. Can we live without digitization? Not for long. Can we live without some risk instruments on the financing part? Not for long, because one contract that gets into a mess will be a very unfortunate domino effect. So I appeal to a lot of, and electric buses and public mobility does not sit in one particular ministry. A lot of pieces of this puzzle sit in several ministries and needs the cooperation. I mean, this project has never been more federal. Needs the cooperation of a lot of our states. So the only way we'll get to our targets is through consistent, simultaneous, really hard work and effort, but only for a few years, 2 to 3 years. And these 2 to 3 years in my head are extremely crucial. Tendering for buses, is one part of the puzzle. We've crossed one model for tendering for buses, but I can tender away and we can contract away. But underneath that contract is a lot of things that have to fall into place.
Go ahead. Generally, your question was, how do we scale EV buses, right, across? Okay. I think anything that you scale, and she's right about it, the software will eat the world, right? Every piece of what we live in will have a technology influence. But leaving that apart, you solve anything about scale by solving economics of it. Today, assuming there's enough capacity to build electric buses, why are operators and everybody else not buying electric buses and just putting them on the road? Because economics doesn't work. The collection of a bus today is 7,000 rupees a day. Bombay, Delhi, you look at any city, and that makes it 2 lakh rupees a month. That's the EMI of an electric bus without subsidy, 2 lakh rupees a month. Forget about the cost of anything else beyond that, right? The electricity cost, etc. So economics doesn't work out. But given we work in 40 cities and we see so many operators running buses, the average collection of a bus running 250 kilometers in a day, and 250 kilometers is nothing. It's 20 kilometers per hour for 12 hours. 250 kilometers a day, the collection of the bus will be 35,000 rupees at 2 rupees per kilometer. 2 rupees per kilometer is cheaper than your own two-wheeler. It's cheaper than a shared auto. So the economics work out. The reason we are not able to go and get a collection of 15,000 on a bus every day is because we don't match demand and supply. We have a $25 billion industry, and how many data scientists have we deployed to figure out demand and supply? We haven't. and again, 70% buses are run by private operators. Who is giving them data? Who is telling them, there's a pilferage by 20% on so many private operator buses, right? And they're still running the bus. They still make enough money. So my point is, the buses will be digital, they'll be tech, and you can grow enough ridership, and the bus quality will improve, right? Electric buses, AC buses, the enough quality will improve. And as a result, you grow collection from 7,000 to 10,000 and 12,000, literally in no time. And any electric bus is feasible. Electric bus is feasible in a city at 10,000 rupees collection per day, which is nothing. To make this kind of money is so easy in a bus. We have our respected operators in Kerala and in Tamil Nadu, where they make 15,000 rupees a day, just running 250 kilometers. They already figured it. All of those buses should get replaced by electric buses, without even blinking an eye, because it's so feasible. So I think we can all scale it. We have to solve the tech, we have to solve the pilferage, we have to solve, bank and everybody's faith in that you can loan a bus to a private operator as well. Not just the government actually, right? Even private operators should take those buses. I don't know if I answered, but I made an attempt.
Thanks, Mohit. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
May I ask a question, sir?
Yeah, please.
I have my name is Devre. I came from Bangalore. I have a request to make based on some experience that I had in Kochi yesterday. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes. Keep the mic close to you.
Yeah. I have a request to make based on my experience in Kochi yesterday. One of the panel members just now mentioned that there should be an app which will help me to plan my journey in a city. I have this destination, I have so much time. Now I had exactly the same issue yesterday. I wanted to visit the Fort Kochi and I had just about 2-3 hours. And I know Kochi has a metro, Kochi has a water transport, but I did not really have any help whatsoever yesterday. So I had no choice but to finally depend on Ola and Uber, and ended up spending something like 800 rupees from MG Road, Cochin to Fort Kochi and back. And therefore, frankly, I don't think the citizens should wait for 2047, as the panel member said, that should be the vision for developing an app. That app is needed very, very badly and very, very urgently. So that's the request I have to make. Nothing more than that.
Thank you. I think that's a very, very interesting point you make. If you have a response, otherwise I think just a point to be noted, yeah. Excellent. Go ahead.
So I am from Kerala State Electricity Board, the distribution company here in Kerala. So I am from the nodal agency from Trivandrum, which is taking care of the renewable energy as well as the electric vehicles. Question number 1, short questions. You are increasing the EV vehicles at the outset, agreed. But the infrastructure, or what about the network and all, will it be developed accordingly? No. How the power demand can be met if it is not being planned? This is the right time, and it is high time seems to address this. Question number 2 related to that. If at all we are increasing it, what is our ultimate aim in using this electric vehicle? We want to convert the fossil fuel and all to the green. But what we are doing now, we are charging the battery from the power which is available, again which is being manufactured from the thermal coal. So this is not the solution. How much the ratio, the frequency of the vehicles to be increased, 2047 vision and all on, we are also agreed to that. But that much renewable energy has to be anticipated, a roadmap has to be given, and transport department, power and all should put their heads together, and they have to walk together to have the real mission to be achieved. The last question for me is that I'm not putting any panelist and all, the moderator can choose his own thing to answer. Vocal for local. Here, see what we are facing as a utility. Central government, MNRE and all, making so much of effort, DCR, domestic content requirement, Indian make and all. But unfortunately, when we are making such rules, such specifications, there is no indigenous make. I'm not talking about railway alone. Of course, I heard that. I'm happy to learn that railway system has got DCR and indigenous, fine. But when you take other sectors and all, Indian make equipments, whenever we go for a higher end, I'm talking about certain monopark panels and for renewable energies, it's not there. So what is happening ultimately, this is going to a monopoly to certain types of manufacturers alone. So the government has to have certain measures and they have to put all the measures in position to see that whenever local is there, but provisions must be available here in India itself to supply the same so that the central financial assistance subsidy can be availed by the public by making this indigenous or DCR content equipments. Thank you.
Anyone who would like to take that?
I can take the first question. I'm not fully sure I got the second one clearly enough. So, sir, the first question was about the power supply. I think I mostly understood that part. I didn't hear it completely. But I think, like I was saying before, this is a sector where for the next 2 to 3 years, and immediately, we have to work in parallel. And what I mean by that, specifically to your issue, you're absolutely right that where is the power going to come from? What if all the buses and all the electric vehicles charge at the same time? The assumptions being used for buses are all standard across the country. 20% during the day, 80% during the night, 20 to 30 in the morning, 70 to 80 at night. Everybody is doing the same thing, roughly around the country. So unless we do the planning on the power side, for which there's a lot of budgetary necessity from the DISCOM, there's land assistance, there's a lot of planning, infrastructure and money need that is fundamental to the bus supply. There's no point in getting into a contract. And this has happened before. Contracts have been signed, the bus is ready to be delivered. In some cases, the bus has even been delivered, but there's no power infrastructure at the depot. So this is what I mean by parallel work. To the extent that we can, what we do in our tenders is that we will not take demand from a state or anybody unless there is at least a budgetary sign-off for the power development portion. Otherwise, there's a time lag. And I'm not saying the DISCOMs will not do it, they will do it. But you'll have to wait for the next budgetary cycle for them to plan this level of infrastructure. Often it's the cost of a transformer that is needed to supply the level of power that's needed for buses. So this kind of parallel effort and planning has to happen. The second thing is, I think I heard a bit of your question on renewable-based charging. That will come. Fundamentally, it is cheaper because the cost of solar power or the price of producing solar power is just basically cheaper, largely cheaper than what's on the grid across the country. But here's where our legacy systems come into play. We have something called cross-subsidy surcharge, as you know very well. Across the states, to even purchase power on an open access basis, by the time I pay my cross-subsidy surcharge and other such fees, the landed cost of my solar power is only a few paise, 10 paise, maybe a few paise less than what I'm purchasing from the grid. So, there's some work to be done on the policy front as well, because the only other option is to build your solar plant next to your bus stop, which we don't have place.
So can I add one line to this?
Very briefly, Mohit, we don't have time, very briefly. No, go ahead.
I was saying, India generates some 60 GW watts of energy, solar energy now. This number was 25 in 2017. It became 40, 50, 60. And we get 5,000 trillion gigawatts of solar energy on our land today. We will produce all of it. It doesn't have to be coal at all.
So just one more point I want to add to what Mahua mentioned, since you come from the electricity board. I think what we should start looking at is how do we nudge charging behavior in such a way that it starts using your off-peak power. And the only way you can do that is by having pricing mechanisms which price lower at off-peak times. Now, this is something China has done in a big way. Delhi is planning to do that. It's something you may want to think of is how do you encourage people to charge during your off-peak time? That's where you'll be using your surplus capacity for charging. I think that's something that we need to think about, particularly when we talk about swapping. Now, when you look at swapping, swapping allows you to do that. There's flexibility in when to charge. But for a moving vehicle that is charging on board, they can only charge when you have gaps in their movement patterns. So this is, I think, what I would say is still growing, and these kind of things will come up. But to my mind, it's very interesting, very, very important that the transport industry and the electricity industry starts working together. You're fortunate in Kerala, ex-transport secretary has moved as power secretary. I think that's what you should try and leverage and show the rest of the country what can happen. Anyway, with this, we are sort of out of time. I would thank the panelists for a fascinating discussion. I think we talked about many of the areas that should be part of Vision 2047 for urban mobility. We talked about localizing metros. We heard about how much more metro is coming up. We talked about electrification of vehicles. We talked about buses going up. I think that's all part of what Vision 2047 for urban mobility will look like. With this, I would like to thank the panelists once again. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I would now request Shri Jaideep, OSD, and EOJ's Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs to come up on stage and honor our chairman and the panelists. Dr. O.P. Agarwal. Next, Mr. Vikash Kumar. Ms. Mahua Acharya. Mr. Mukund Kumar Sinha. Now, I would like to request Sri Loknath Behra, MD Kochi Metro Rail Limited, to come up on stage and honor our panelists. Mr. Thampi Koshi. Dr. P.C. Sehgal. Mr. Mohit Dubey. Mr. Rajiv Joysar. Thank you, sir. We thank you for joining us and for your cooperation.
don't go away. We have a cultural program from 7 p.m. onwards in this venue, followed by the dinner just outside this Liva Hall. Thank you again.